Do you think that the Palestinian people are waiting for your recognition? Do you think we need your recognition of a Palestinian? If anyone wants to do something to help the Palestinian people, they can stop the genocide, ban Israel, disarm Israel, remove all legitimacy from Israel, boycott, sanctions against Israel, and take action against Israel. That's if you're serious. And the Palestinian people will liberate themselves from the Israeli occupation. And once a liberated state is established, the American administration will come to ask to recognize the Palestinian state, or de facto recognize and deny that they were supporting a genocide at some point in the future. And the thing that J.D. Vance needs to worry about more is if he has recognition from the same people who voted for his administration and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is facing huge problems now in his administration, especially from the America First and MAGA crew. You told us you're going to focus on America, you're going to stop wars, you're going to stop intervention, and all we're seeing is that you're preferring Israel to other countries too. At one point, when one of the problems happened in the United States recently, the United States wanted initially to have a condition for the state to support banning the boycotts against Israel to get the aid in, and they later withdrew it and deleted it from their website. So they're prioritizing Israel over the United States. From an American perspective, Trump supporter perspective, these people have no legitimacy. J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, and anyone in the administration, because it's Israel first, because they're not prioritizing the United States, and because they're going against every single thing that they promised the American people. So J.D. Vance and people like him, especially in the United States administration, should be more concerned about American recognition in their own government. They have an internal problem. Rather than saying that he's not going to recognize the Palestinians. Dude, we don't need your recognition. I mean, the Palestinian people have been left to face genocide in Gaza, and primarily thanks to the Palestinian resistance, then added by, of course, this global revolution of the free people of the world, each to their own capacity. Things are changing. That's why some governments are changing their tune slightly and talking about aid and talking about recognition. Not because they want to support the Palestinians facing genocide. No, it's because they want to take down the global pressure. Protests globally, unprecedented numbers. More and more people speaking up, breaking the barriers of fear. If we take, for example, Britain, banning Palestine Action, prescribing it as a terrorist organization. That was an attempt from the British authorities to level up the silencing and bring something else that will create fear. It had the opposite effect. Today they arrested hundreds of people who were protesting because they were showing support for Palestine Action. And most of these people, by the way, were white British people. Retired doctors, retired professionals, all from all walks of life. So they're facing a huge problem, despite all of these attempts to create this whole fear narrative and you can't talk. People are breaking all of that. And something interesting is happening. This time it's happening with Egypt. Egypt has done certain things in the past that it was criticized for heavily. First and foremost, they have the capacity to take way more action than what they did so far to lift the pressure of the Palestinian people. If we're not going to talk about direct military confrontation with Israel, which they are fully entitled to by international law, like the Palestinian people have the right to resist. Countries surrounding Israel have a right to attack Israel as a preemptive measure because it's a reckless entity committing war crimes, and that has already been confirmed by the international courts, the ICJ and the ICC. Egypt recently struck a deal with Israel. And we constantly talk about the fact that Egypt always maintains this diplomatic tone and what have you. They had the capacity to also reduce the level of starvation, at least from the Palestinian side, if they didn't want to go on an all-out war against Israel. They've been one of those countries who speak about diplomacy and talk and peace process. But now we had an interesting statement coming from the Egyptian foreign minister when he was meeting his Turkish counterpart. They had a joint statement during which the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration fully condemning Israel's expansion, saying that it violates international law, but he also stated a couple of other things. We strongly support and participate in the emergency meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to discuss the dangerous development from the Israeli side and affirm the rejection and condemnation of it. Okay, nothing surprising here. The Arab, he stated that the issue concerns the Arab and Islamic world and humanity as a whole, stressing that these crimes and their widespread scope cannot be tolerated or dealt with complacency. Displacement is a red line for Egypt, Jordan, and the countries in the region, and will not be allowed to be crossed through a series of desperate and miserable attempts. We are capable of coordinating and unifying our positions with our brothers within the framework of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to formulate a strong and united position and mobilize international efforts to confront these unacceptable actions which reflect an extremely dangerous development. Note the mobilization, the action side, and no talk about de-escalation or opening a peace process or what have you. Of course, this is still a statement, and we've heard a lot of statements. What we need is action. But even in relation to the statement itself, the terminology that the Egyptian foreign minister is using in the statement that he had with his Turkish counterpart is more than previous statements that we heard from them. And that's something that could indicate that there would be preparations that something might happen. But again, nothing is enough so long as no action is taken directly, because the people have had enough of these statements and only talks. At the end of the day, people need action. And the action that countries, including Egypt, are doing now are not enough. They're talking about the airdropped aid now. The death toll only from the airdropped aid, since its beginning recently, by the way, regardless of previous airdropped aid, is 23 people. 124 injured. People were crushed under this airdropped aid. We had buildings partially collapsing because people were going through this airdropped aid. 23 people. They want you to believe that the Palestinian human being in Gaza is a number, is not a human. 23 people dying from airdropped aid, over 1,500 being martyred, seeking aid, thousands injured. These are unbelievable numbers. So this airdropped aid that's happening from Egypt, from the UAE, Jordan, other countries too, Britain, Israel itself is supposedly dropping aid too. That is not an answer. That is only a temporary solution that does not address the root of the problem, which is completely lifting the siege and allowing all aid in. The population in Gaza already faced every crime under the sun. The basic things that they need now, and the bare minimum, is all humanitarian aid available and medical aid. Many people are dying because of the lack of treatment, because of the lack of medicines. Powdered milk for infants, medicines. People have been having operations without anesthetics for 2 years now. Imagine. Cancer patients, people who have diabetes, people with kidney problems, with heart problems, with blood pressure, let alone a population facing a genocide. And all of that is deliberate, and all of these are genocidal acts. Israel does that deliberately. And they're cutting off food to take the energy out of the population altogether. Like no sugar even. Recently had a couple of bits going here and there, so that the people don't have an energy. Yesterday I spoke about the biological warfare. 2 doctors in Gaza are speaking about carcinogenic elements in certain food that Israel allows into the Gaza Strip to cause widespread disease. That's biological warfare. And that's something no one should be silent about. Therefore, all of the action that's being done now by these countries as a result of the popular pressure is not enough. But it's happening because of the pressure. Therefore, the pressure must remain there and escalate. Now, so far, from the statements that we heard in relation to this campaign coming from Benjamin Netanyahu inside of the Gaza Strip, it's been extremely shady, and Netanyahu is not publishing and clarifying how he's going to take those steps inside of the Gaza Strip. This adds more speculation to the genuine motives of Netanyahu in full occupation. Clearly, he wanted to keep his government in its current formation up until Israel gets closer to the next early elections in 2026 before he declares any deal that's about to happen. So far, they're talking that about an all-out deal, and that this all-out deal will only be including Hamas disarming and not having any role politically or militarily inside of the Gaza Strip. But that's something that Israel will eventually have a U-turn on, because that wasn't something that Israel had as a prerequisite or a demand to go into previous ceasefires. That wasn't a demand from Israel when Netanyahu agreed to a full ceasefire with Joe Biden. That was only an addition coming from Israel to make the negotiations more difficult and to buy more time with the full support of the United States. That's why the United States is playing that role in Lebanon too. But from now until then, everything can happen. Benjamin Netanyahu can start to carry out more dangerous attacks. The man is still in power. He is still a wanted war criminal. Israel still is an entity of terror. And the United States is still supporting Israel. Therefore, this is an extremely dangerous time, a very dangerous moment. they can continue their genocide. They can expand their genocide. This exceptionally limited aid that's going inside of the Gaza Strip now can be cut again very soon. And if aid is cut completely, although it's very minimal now, for even a month or just weeks, the results could be catastrophic for the population because they're already malnourished. They're already facing so many problems. So there are a lot of problems coming ahead, and there are still no talks about a clear vision on how to end this genocide.